Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Property. I'm your host, Cheryl Leong from Property Development Australia. I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we virtually meet today, and I pay respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. So at the Business of Property, we interview superstar guests in the property development space that share their expertise, their deals, and their stories to help empower, build, and grow our community of property investors and developers. So, hello to Facebook land, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Give me a shout out if you are here with us today. And today we have Jarrad Bromley from Seneca Property. So Jarrad has had decades worth of development projects under his belt. His background as a civil engineer has allowed him to really dive into the property development space. And I'd love for you to meet Jarrad to share his journey and some of the projects that he's done over the last 10 years, particularly from his first development to the one that he currently has. And the cool thing is that we get to actually see the numbers, um, and talk through the purchasing, the numbers that have gone into construction, and actually see what the profit is at the end. So Jarrad, please come down to join me.
Hi, Cheryl. How you going? Thanks for having
i'm
me on. I'm really
I'm
excited.
fabulous. Thank you so much for being here, Jarrad. Tell us a little bit about, we always want to know where people's backgrounds are, really brought them to development. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so for me, it all started really here with this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This is the newer version of it. But back when I was 17, 18, I picked up that book and started reading into it and learnt a lot. Really gave me a lot of insight into how to look after my finances moving forward and the best way to set myself up for life. So that really opened my eyes about where to invest, how to invest my money.
So at that age, I mean, you're still sort of teenager. A lot of people are sort of thinking, I'm going to go up 17, 18, I'm going to go out drinking. Maybe that's just me. But
Yeah, no,
what was it then what was the next sort of action step? Because it was all about taking action towards that sort of financial freedom.
yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I did learn a lot of lessons from it, but I definitely also did go out and enjoy myself as well. Can't lie and say I just saved every single penny. But yeah, over the next 4 years or so, I saved up a lot. Um, I guess really the main thing that the book taught me was assets versus liabilities. So, um,
Mm,
what an asset is something that puts money into your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket, really. So it's all about and then leveraging debt. So using good debt is a good thing to have. Borrowing money
mm,
from the bank to
mm,
increase your assets versus bad debt. So bad debt's things that you borrow money to buy liabilities with. So with that in mind, I went out and started saving for my first deposit for a house,
mm.
and that's what I did over the next 4 years. I was living away from home, but on a reasonable salary, so I saved up a deposit there and went out and purchased my first property. Before that, though,
And
I
was that,
obviously did a lot,
oh,
a lot of research in the area
yes.
because I learned really this book was telling me that property was the best investment for me. And then I guess having that engineering
Mm,
knowledge while I was studying at the time, rather than just doing a buy and hold investment, I wanted to figure out how I could best maximize the return rather than just relying on the market doing the work for me. And development, all arrows just pointed
mm,
towards development, so I could kind of control the growth there and add value to it as well. So what I started doing was reading all the local council rules. I looked in my local council where I lived, which is what a lot of investors do for their first thing, whether rightly or wrongly. A bit of comfort there. So I looked up all the local council rules to see what land you needed to do a development, what you could get away with, and what the
mm.
requirements were basically. So learning a lot about that, and I've got to give a lot of thanks, to be honest, to the duty officer at the local council. I'm sure he fielded a lot of phone calls from me over the years, probably hassling him to try and get answers on things, and they can't give you answers, obviously, because the risk lies
No,
with them. But they
no.
gave me a lot of advice, which was great. So don't be afraid to ring up those guys and ask for advice if you can, if they feel like giving you any. So once I had an idea on what I wanted to do, I saved up that deposit and purchased my first property on the Central Coast. in New South Wales.
Fabulous.
So
And so your first property wasn't so much a buy and hold, but you had clear intentions from the very beginning that it was going to be something that you could either add value to or add value and develop.
definitely, yeah, that's right. Like I was talking about before, I didn't really want to just buy and hold something and wait for the market to do its work. And
Mm,
I didn't really also want to chase the high rental returns either, because I kind of figured that it'd take a long while from a high rental return to save up another deposit.
mm,
It couldn't be that high of a rental return. So what I thought property development was the way to go, and yeah, I could use my engineering skills, I guess, to figure out how I could develop it and make the best use of the land that was already there. So straight intentions to buy a property that could be developed, and the basic one that I figured out, the easiest type of development to get into was a house on a corner block. Because it straight away had
mm.
access to the backyard from the side street where you could build a new house if council allowed it. Obviously, you had to make sure the block was the right size, and things like sewer mains and went in the
Excellent.
way.
Well, let's do a little bit of show and tell because we'd love to see this property, and
Yeah,
then we can do some numbers here and tell us a little bit about us how you purchased it. And anyone, if you've got questions here, please feel free to pop it in the chat as well, so we can talk to it or we can provide some answers to them, provide some feedback. So, okay, we can see your screen now. I might just get you to zoom out a tiny bit so we can look at some
yep,
photos there.
yep.
Okie
So
dokie.
we've got, yeah. So this is the original house that I bought. It's not the most appealing house, obviously, and it's not in the most desirable area either. I just looked where I could afford. Um,
Mm,
we can't start off in the premium suburbs, blue chip locations. Obviously, I just started wherever I could afford and where the numbers stacked up from
mm.
the development perspective. So I'm a big spreadsheet guru, or not guru, sorry, lover. Everything I do goes through a spreadsheet. So
Yes.
all the numbers, to the best of my ability, were punched into a spreadsheet to figure out if it was going to stack up from a numbers perspective or not. And that spreadsheet's just grown over the years and refined it to get to where it is today. But this is the house from the front view, and you can see this is the aerial view of it here, the house on the front corner there, and the vacant backyard facing this side street. So that kind of straight away to me pointed out that there's development potential in that.
Mm,
Um, a couple of the key considerations are that it fell a little bit. The slope on the land is a big thing to look at. So it
mm,
sloped a little bit towards the back, but the main thing was that this back block of land sloped towards the street.
mm,
So any new development that you put on that land is going to drain easily towards the street. It's a big thing that council require as part of your development. So that
mm,
worked pretty good for that one. And yeah, then once I found that, I just basically went through all the development rules in the council and made sure that it could be developed. And I relied heavily on the duty planner to give me as much as he would at that stage. And to be honest, I hadn't had a good relationship with any architects or town planners, obviously, because I hadn't done any of this work. So I was calling around, talking to different people, trying to get as much as I could out of them. Yeah, and and then finding the one that we could work best with, so I could sign up with them, and they could help me throughout the
mm,
whole process.
mm. I'm just going to ask a few questions as to how you acquired the site to begin with.
For sure.
So was that through sort of realestate.com or was this purely off market?
No, this one was realestate.com.
Mm,
This is where I found it for sale.
yeah.
.com.au. It was for sale. They were asking 220,000. It's a crazy price and it's really cheap. It was a long
Mm,
time ago now. It was almost 10 years ago. But it was still quite cheap for this area. And I guess just the layout of the house inside and the condition of the house, it wasn't great. It'd been
mm,
on the market for quite a while at 220,
mm,
and I just offered them, did the traditional low ball style and offered them 200 grand, and they took it straight away. So they accepted the offer straight away. So I was really happy with that. And being only a 10% deposit at that time, it's $20,000. I had that saved plus some purchasing costs, so it was all right
mm.
for me to go ahead with.
Excellent. And you knew that at that size you could do, was it a dual occupancy or was it a subdivision?
Yeah. So with this size, council, this council needed a bit larger to do a straight subdivision, but they had another way around it where you could do a dual occupancy, and then once it was built, you could apply for a subdivision for some reason or another. So it wasn't large enough to subdivide off and have a vacant block of land, but once you had a dwelling on there, you're allowed to subdivide it off. So that's the path that I went down, and it was Torrens title subdivision in the end.
And how did you because how old were you at the time, if you don't mind me asking?
I was 22, 23 when I bought it.
22.
Yeah.
And so in terms of saving up and serviceability and all that, because you have to build another, you've got to put some money towards the renovation and some construction. Were there any sort of what were the barriers for you then, the challenges in terms of financing, or were there not really any because you had some good income?
There were definitely some barriers. That's why some of that was due to the long time frame of this project. You can see that it took nearing 5 years, so 4 years, 3 months was the length of the project. A normal project of this scale would take hopefully around the 2-year mark, maybe 2.5 years. But yeah, this one was drawn out quite a while, and that was basically me learning the ropes on what to do, and also getting the finance together for certain parts of it. It wasn't so hard to borrow to get the finance for the construction, but it was more hard to continue saving so that I could pay the development costs and the renovation costs along the way. So that's a big thing that you obviously need to consider and factor in before you get into one of these projects, is to not only have the purchase costs, but then have the development costs in cash. The banks don't generally lend you money to get the development done or to renovate. It's pretty hard to do that. But then once it come to the construction, the numbers stacked up fairly well. They could see that the value of the house was going to be far more than the actual construction. So they were happy from an LVR, loan to value ratio perspective, and the rental return from it as well was much more than the serviceability of the loan. So they were happy to lend me 100% of the construction costs at that time.
Good stuff. And what would you do now, looking back? Now, let's run through some numbers. So you purchased it for 200K. Oh, yes, that's right, 200,000. Development cost that includes sort of the subdivision, the DA costs, and then you've got construction.
259. So that, so for this one, I went for a project home. As you can probably tell, there's pretty basic single-story project home. For the area that it was in, it was still a good quality home. As you can tell, it's much nicer quality than the home that was on the front. Going for a really fancy architecturally designed product in this area would have stood out like a sore thumb, and it probably wouldn't have got the returns that I would have hoped for. Every house in this little area was only single story too, so a 2-story house, I don't know if it would have been even approved, but it just would have looked strange. So I went for a project home. It was much cheaper. It's something that I would to be honest, I would do again and again if I could on future projects. Since then, I've actually had everything architecturally designed and privately built by private builders, just purely because you can generally fit a better product on, and some project home builders don't want to do the more tricky subdivisions and dual occupancies, but this one was really straightforward, and they were happy to do it. So it kept the construction costs down to 260. The renovation costs of $60,000. That's because council wanted me to build a standalone single garage that could be used. You could kind of see it here in this photo. That's a single garage that was built for the front house. Council wanted me to do that, obviously, because all that they need to have the appropriate parking for that house. So they've got a bit of a shared driveway here that goes to a standalone single garage for the front house, and also goes to the single garage here for this new house. So that encompasses doing, just a basic tidy up on the inside. All it was paint, and I think we even painted the kitchen cupboards and got the floor sanded and put some new cheap curtains in. It's very basic renovation. And that's the inside of this one here, is just the inside of the new home. So again, a basic kitchen from a project home, but for that area, again, it was all that was needed.
Yeah, sure. And so what did you end up selling these for? So we've got the renovated house.
Yep, for sure. So I've got here the cash investments. That's the actual cash out of my pocket that the whole development cost me. It was about $160,000. When you add in the borrowing costs, the total investment was $520,000. And then I ended up selling the new house for $450,000. And I sold the old house for almost $350,000 there. So I've got the sale fees and some GST to come off that. And then if we scroll down, we can see the profit for the project was $235,000. So that I guess in today's money, in today's size, larger projects might not seem that significant. It still is. It's a great return, but I guess particularly for that time back then, and the amount of cash invested there, I was absolutely over the moon with that return.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was very good.
absolutely. I mean, considering that was the first ever property that you purchased, and to be able to, one, make a profit out of it and make a healthy profit out of it is fabulous. I'm not too sure if I can see any comments here. If you've got questions, please. Here we go. Right. Feel free to pop them in if you've got any for Jarrad, just to go through any of those numbers there. But it just goes to show, I mean, and anyone that's particularly sort of in their early 20s and all that, looking at getting into the property space, and you've seen there that it's definitely possible. You were patient through that process as well, not thinking that you'd have to do it within 6 months. But looking at this being your first project, what would you do differently now?
It's a lot differently now, as I've built the team that I work with day in, day out, and I use them for all my services, and I get them. I understand the process as well, like from start to finish, the order you need to go through to engage people. So I would probably just run it a lot more smoothly. Whether I would do things differently or not, probably not a great deal differently. It's just understanding the process and knowing it a bit smoother. Having the funds up front helped. I mean, would help rather than having to save throughout the project as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, they're the biggest things. For me, it was really just biting the bullet and getting into the market, and having a go at it. So obviously, I was procrastinating a little bit at the start while I was saving, and I was a bit fearful about whether I would make money, what would happen if I bought it and I couldn't subdivide it. But I think for me, everyone's different. For me, every investment has a risk, and it's just how you manage it is where it comes back to. So if I had have bought it for $200,000 and couldn't subdivide it, I mean, it was a very cheap property. I could rent it for $250 a week, and it probably would have paid itself off anyway. So there was kind of a fallback option there.
And did you, in terms of mentoring or have other people to talk to about this, apart from the duty planner who took your 500 calls, was there anyone else that you felt that you could sort of bounce ideas off, and even just the feasibility as well?
No, not really. I didn't find anyone for this project. It was pretty much myself. I didn't have any relationships built. I didn't really think about having a mentor or anyone I could do that with. And I kind of, to be honest, I probably was a bit afraid to share what my numbers were with people. They might think I'm, my numbers are way off and I've got no idea what I'm talking about or something like that. So this one was pretty much, to be honest, all myself. And it did take me a long time to build that confidence. And that was what happened over the years as well. I've built that confidence, and now I'm
Absolutely.
confident in my own numbers, but also confident if I've got a question to ask people in the team that I've got, what their opinion is.
Yeah, and I'll admit as well, when I first did my first projects or any investments, likewise, I didn't have anyone to speak to, and I think a lot of people start off in their journey feeling that sense of, if I show people, they think I'm an idiot.
Yeah,
And
that's
I've got
exactly
stuff
right.
wrong, and then they'll poo-poo it, and so there's a whole lot of that mindset stuff we've been talking about before, around why it takes us so long to get to the point that we want to, because we feel that there's so many fears around things.
The other thing, I guess, for me was that I was kind of fearful to show people. On one side, it was because they might think I'm an idiot if my numbers are wrong, but two is because I don't want to feel like I'm gloating or anything, saying like, oh, I've got this property, I'm a property investor, and I'm going to make all this money, or look how good I'm doing. It's not about that. I just wanted to kind of run it off people and get a second opinion from them, like an unjudgmental opinion, which is kind of hard to find, I think, these days.
Absolutely. And this is the thing, I'm really sort of proud of the community, the Facebook group in Property Development Australia, that people are that they see that they can share and ask the questions, and there's no judgment in that there are lots of people there that are able to sort of guide them or support them or encourage them through the way. But exactly what you say,
Sure.
it's about building your team that now you can ask it any question and you'll find an answer to it some way or some form.
And there's probably, not that I know of, there's no shortcut to that. It was I've been through a few different relationships with architects and surveyors to finally get, where I am today with the team that I'm with with the team that I trust. So you just got to I just had to get out there and just do my best and ask the questions and keep trying to find different people that you get along with as well as you can trust.
Absolutely. So from here, what was next? What was the next challenge?
Yeah, so from here I went on to my next one. I'd actually bought this just before I'd sold the previous one. So this was I'd obviously, over that 4 years, I'd continued working and saving a deposit for another house. And I'd then went out and purchased this property in a slightly more desirable area, out of the Central Coast up in Newcastle, but again it's on a busier road in Newcastle again. So just something that I could afford, but it had that development potential. So it's a 3-bedroom house. It's got two bathrooms and just that single garage down there. The thing that stuck out to me automatically was a 978 square block. So it's quite large. As you can see here, the aerial photo, that's it there. And there's the large backyard there. So the plan for this one, for me, I had two things in mind. The first option I was thinking about was this, to build a duplex in the backyard. So to retain the existing house, make like a battle axe block down to the back and have this duplex, which I've got. But the other option was to bulldoze the whole thing and put 4 townhouses like side by side on the block. Doing all the numbers and everything, it kind of stacked up better to do that option, to have the 4 townhouses. So I went down the path of getting that all designed up and drawn up by the architects.
Okay.
So I paid a fair bit of money doing all that. We submitted it to council, and council didn't like the idea. There's actually an intersection just off the page here that you can't see. And the design that we did there, for some reason, I think it's to get the right aspects for the backyards, it had the driveway switched to this side of the block of land. And council didn't like that idea because it was pushing the driveway too close to the intersection. And they said, we've got plans to make traffic signals here within the next 12 months. Mind you, it's been 5 years and there's no traffic signals there, but that's a different point. And so they rejected it and told us, to shift the driveway over to this side and redo the design and resubmit it. I'm glad they did that now, because in doing that, I looked closer at the designs of the buildings, and they were really, really tight, really small townhouses, and I didn't really like it, how small they were, just for the saleability of them. And also that it would have been quite expensive to knock the house down and then build the 4 townhouses. To be honest, how much I struggled to get the finance to just build 2 of them, I wouldn't have got the finance to build 4 of them. So I would have had to sell a lot of them off the plan, which I've been trying to avoid to do. In the end, I reverted back, just on my own decision. I guess I looked at the numbers all again, put them all into my spreadsheet, and it wasn't quite as profitable, but it was pretty close, just to retain the house, and to build the duplex in the backyard. So a big thing for me now, ever since we're looking at that, is to always highly consider keeping the house there and utilizing that one, because you can rent the house out during construction, which I have been able to do. So you're keeping some kind of income coming through. And 2, because when I go and sell that house, I don't have to pay GST on it. So if you're going to sell a brand new built house, I'm not an accountant or a tax advisor, but you've got to pay GST on it, and to sell the older house that hasn't been newly built, you don't have to pay GST. So you're saving a fair bit of money there, and you're not losing that value of the house there. So yeah, when I looked at all the numbers, that's kind of what the best outcome for me was to move forward, was to just build the duplex in the backyard.
And you're mitigating the risk, right? You still have a property that's sitting there, and
That's right.
the value still retains itself.
That's right. Yeah, you're not losing all that value. Like, that's, I don't know, $300,000 worth of house there if you just go and put a bulldozer through it. And
Yeah,
it seems, yeah.
excellent. So let's run through some numbers there. Purchased it for $487, which again sounds so cheap.
Yeah.
Well, will we see that ever again?
Yeah. Not in this area, but we will in some places. Like,
Yes.
this house probably in today's market will probably be worth about $700,000 or something like that if it was untouched. Maybe 750. But yeah, so again, good purchase price. That was back in August. The plan was to subdivide one into three, construct two-story townhouses in the backyard. Development costs, again, that's just to get the DA approval. Again, that's a little bit higher because I had to pay the architects twice. So that's a learning there to pick a strategy and kind of stick to it. But yeah, that's the development cost to get my DA approval, and then everything from there on gets piled into the construction costs. That's not just the construction of the house, that's to also pay to get the construction certificate. So there's a lot of engineering and things you have to pay for in between DA approval and actually building the house. So that's the construction costs there. I haven't sold this yet.
I was going to say, Jarrad, you've got a fair bit of fence on your left and your right. Have you had much, cost in having to replace or replace any of those?
That's a good question. It was drawn on the plans to replace all that fence, because that fence is all 1.5 meters high. It's a good quality COLORBOND fence, but it's 1.5. So the plans say putting a 1.8 meter fence. So upon giving this to the builder, they priced it all up. And then when it come time they priced it all up to put a new 1.8 meter fence in. And when it come time to actually doing the work, they decided to charge me with a variation. They said, we've got the price in there to put the fence in, but you have to pay us to remove the existing fence. That wasn't allowed for. And I was just like, oh, come on, how are you going to build the new fence without pulling down the old fence?
Just on top of it.
So I mean, that was like a $4,000 variation that they tried to charge me for that. And what I basically did is took photos of it, put it up on Gumtree, and let someone come and take it for free.
Yeah,
so
fabulous.
That's a good money saving thing there. Same with this COLORBOND shed that you can see here. This is a perfectly good COLORBOND garage. That they were going to charge me $3,000 variation for that, to remove that COLORBOND garage. I took a photo and put it on Gumtree and sold it for $600.
Someone came to get it.
Someone paid me $600 to take it away instead of me paying the builder $3,000. So there's just little things like that along the way that you just got to think outside the square, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you have to have discussions with the neighbours? Because I can see you've got a few neighbours there, at least 3.
Yep. You do have to have discussions. How do you know all this? I actually didn't discuss. I was relying on the builder doing those discussions with the neighbours, and that was a bad move. The builder in this instance hadn't done that as well as what I would have liked to have been done. So when the fence was being removed, we had some comments from the neighbours, rightly so, because they weren't quite aware of what was going to be happening with their fence, albeit that we were replacing it with a brand new 1.8 metre fence. It's still something that they need to agree to. So we had to kind of stop works midway through that and talk to the landowners on either side and make sure they were happy with what we were doing. And it turned out they were. But it's more just about communication. So letting them know what you're going to do. Obviously, you don't want someone coming ripping down your fence and putting a new one in without knowing about it. So that's another lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. And I mean, obviously, if someone's paying for the fence, because usually they'd have to pay for half the cost of it anyhow. Correct. So I'm sure they'll be fine with someone. I can't see anything on the fence, so it's a good thing that they were happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have to pay. They were getting it free of charge, obviously.
Yeah.
I was paying for the whole new fence, not trying to
Mm,
ask them for half of it. I mean, you
mm,
could do that if you thought and planned ahead really well, but I was more just happy with them not complaining about me doing the
mm,
work,
mm.
with them being content with the work happening. So yeah, I paid for it all, obviously. But yeah, communication as early as you can with your neighbours is the best way
Yeah.
forward. If you
Good
have any
stuff.
concerns, you can get them to sign an agreement to say they're happy with it too.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got a comment here. Well done. Did you involve town planners to assess subdivision prospect before the initial purchase or after? What do you suggest we do these days? Sorry, I can't see your name, but I can see the comment. It's fine.
100%, you should talk to a town planner, engage a town planner to look at it before you do it. I do that on all my developments now. The first one I ran a bit wild and did it myself, but
Mm,
ever since then I've formed a team where I get an architect and a town planner to have a look over the site and give me a bit more confidence. It
mm,
depends on the relationship. A lot of the time, you've got to pay these guys and girls to have a look at it and give you a yield plan or a feasibility on what they think
mm.
can fit on the site. But if you have that relationship with them over time, they might, do it for you for free if they're going to win the project.
Yeah.
It's definitely something I'd recommend. They're not going to, same as a council um, person, the duty planner, though, they're not going to give you an answer and say, yes, you can,
Mm,
because they don't know until you apply for it, but they'll give you
mm-hmm.
fairly good guidance based on their experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. And let's look at some numbers and what it came out to be. So, still in
So
construction?
yeah, so this one, I mean, part of it's gone for a long time, 5 years and 8 months, as you can see. As I
Mm,
was speaking about before, partially because of the planning change, we had to go back and to start all the planning over again, essentially.
yeah.
And then it was struggle getting the finance for me. I had sold the other ones, but still, to get the finance to build, it was an $800,000 build. I'd spent $100,000 getting the
Mm,
construction certificate and everything, and that's including the loan repayments too. But it was an $800,000 build, so to get that finance, I just couldn't get the loan approved. I've been through mortgage broker after mortgage broker, trying to get that done, and they all kept telling me, no, you can't get the finance, we can't get it for you. I ended up going to, I won't say which bank, doesn't really matter. I ended up going to a big four bank, having a good
mm,
relationship, forming a relationship with one of the bankers there directly, funnily enough. And they got me across the line with getting the loan approved. So there's a
fantastic.
lot of people telling you to go to mortgage brokers, and I'm not going to say don't do that, but still keep your options open. Sometimes
Mm,
there's other alternatives to a mortgage broker. They are great generally, but yeah, for me, for this one, I went through a bank. Um, they asked me to, in this instance, they wanted me to sell one of them off the plan
mm,
before giving me the money, which is pretty common, I guess, for them to reduce their risk.
yeah.
What I was getting back to, the reason it was taking so long was because when I finally got to that decision from the bank that I had to sell one off the plan, it was March 2 years ago. I'm not sure if everyone remembers what happened in March 2 years ago, but it was when
No, I
COVID.
don't.
I
Oh, yes, of
think it was
course.
2 years ago.
2020.
2 years ago. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yes. Yes.
March
Oh, lockdown.
2020,
Lockdown
that's
all
when I got
happened.
told.
Yes.
Yeah. So I pretty much listed it. I listed it for $650,000, and we
Ouch.
had, I think, one phone call or two phone calls, and that was about it. Nothing came through. It was like, those shows where the hay ball rolls across the screen and
Mm,
there's nothing
mm,
happening.
mm, mm.
That's what it was like. So then, that was like two or 3 months wasted of nothing. I ended up pulling it from sale, and a little tip, whether it's a tip or not, but something that I learned was I changed my strategy. Rather than planning to build these to sell them, I decided that due to the market conditions having changed, I would build these to hold them. And
Mm,
having decided that I would build to hold, the bank then reassessed the loan application and decided to let me borrow the money without selling any off the plan, because then they take the serviceability, they take the rental income from the townhouses into account when they do the serviceability calculations. So
mm,
that's
mm.
something that I've learned probably moving forward. I'll be holding all of my developments moving forward. As long as, I guess, there's a risk there, you've got to be careful about. You've got to actually plan to rent them and consider what rent you
Yes.
will get. Because if you say you're going to rent them and then you don't, you'll struggle to make the loan repayments, obviously. So
Mm,
yeah, it's got to be
mm.
well calculated. and they lent
Yeah,
me that.
absolutely.
Yeah. And then we started getting building, and the market went crazy after, as everyone knows, after COVID kind of settled down. And because it was going so crazy, I decided that I would just sell one off the plan anyway, because I was, just thinking, what happens if it slows down? It hasn't slowed down, so I regret that decision now, but it doesn't matter. And I ended up selling one off the plan for 710 when I couldn't even get a phone call at 650 prior to COVID happening. So I was very happy with that outcome, even though now I'm not quite as happy,
Yeah. Yeah.
because just nearing on completion now, and my local real estate agent that I'm working with is saying that the other one should sell for about 780 or 90,000, maybe
Yeah.
even pushing
Yeah.
8. So
Mm,
yeah, there's a bit of a lesson there that things will generally sell for more once they're built, if you can
completed.
afford to
Yeah.
wait. Yeah, if you can afford to wait, just because there's uncertainty there from people obviously buying off the plan.
Mm. I like that you've got that green wall on that balcony.
Yeah, that wasn't my idea. There's another lesson. I didn't really love the renders outlooks. I don't love the quality of them. There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot better that can be done.
Mm.
Yeah, so if you're going to sell off the plan, it's worth investing in a good quality visual representation or renderer,
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. So we've got some questions coming in here. Was it a residential loan? If residential loan, how would they have assessed income, assuming build to keep?
It was a residential loan. Um, they assessed the income from, because I was going to build to keep it. They then took the rental incomes from the duplexes into
Potential
account,
rental.
the potential rental income. So yeah, so I had a market appraisal done by one of the real estate agents or the property manager that I usually use,
Mm.
did a
Mm.
market appraisal to say what they would rent for once complete, and that's how they used that. And then
Yeah.
the rental income from the existing house obviously also carried through, plus just my income from my full-time job at the time.
Mm. Awesome. And good evening. Hello. I just purchased in June a 1,012 square meter block. I'm renovating
Cool.
the front house at the moment. At the back, I can build a duplex, but if I do so, I can only strata title if I build only one house. Instead of duplex, I can subdivide. What would be the best outcome for borrowing again and selling? Having said that, my main focus is cash flow keeping. I like that idea. Hmm.
Okay, that's a lot in one question for me. Sorry, I'm trying to.
Well, this is sort of in your situation, I guess, is everyone's situation is going to be different and in terms of your serviceability. And you know, I
Okay,
guess the
I get it now.
more
Sorry.
properties,
Yeah,
is saying more properties or 3 properties or
yeah,
2 properties, basically.
yeah. So for me in this situation, I was able to Torrens title the front house off. So the front house is on its own Torrens title, the existing house up here. And so then that back block is a Torrens title as well, but the duplexes are strata titled with each other, if
Mm,
that makes sense.
mm,
So it depends on the market you're in and the location, is if people are afraid of a strata title, for example, or if they're used to
mm,
it, if it's a common thing. In Newcastle, where I've been investing, it's quite common for duplexes and townhouses to be strata titled. So people aren't
mm,
really afraid of that. They're growing used to that. So I had no issue with doing the strata title
mm,
in that situation. I mean, in between these projects, I'd actually done another one, and it was a corner block again, similar to the first one, but it wasn't big enough to Torrens title, so it was a strata titled corner block. It was only a 450 square meter block to begin with.
mm.
Yeah, and the front block ended up being like 250 and
Wow.
255, and the back block was 195 with a big house on it. So yeah, it just depends
That's
on the
awesome.
area that
Yeah.
on the area that you're in and whether people are comfortable with the strata. But generally speaking, I guess the more dwellings you can get on, the bigger the
Mm,
return, but not always.
mm. And that's a good point, particularly when, if and it's also whether if you're holding it as well, and strata's not going to be a problem for you, um, then that's not then in your keeping strata might not be an issue. But if you're looking to sell, and like I said, if that particular market likes Torrens title, then it's probably likely that it's just going to be cheaper than the Torrens title.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Cool.
It's if you own both the buildings in the strata, then there's no issue, is there? Because you're only having meetings with yourself, annual meetings with yourself.
That's
As the
right.
strata manager.
This
Yeah.
agreements or disagreements. So thanks for the questions, everybody. So expected profit after all the costs, we've got 550,000, which isn't too bad. And considering that they haven't been completed, did you say that?
That's
They should
right.
be
Yeah,
completed
they're
this
meant to due
next
this
month.
next month. Yeah, in February. Finally, we'll get these ones done and sold. And that's the expected
Amazing.
profit based on the sale prices that I've been told.
Great stuff. So excited to see that come together.
Very,
I'm sure you're
yes.
looking forward to settlement day.
Yes, I sure am looking forward to settlement and onwards and upwards to the next one, which is, the way I like to do it. I've kind of grown to realise, especially since the projects that I've shown you, I've gone for 4.5 and 5.5 years. The most important thing in property development for me is getting it done as fast as you can, and then you can roll your money on to the next one. But obviously, the longer you go in between, you might get some extra market growth. So with this one, this profit's much more substantial than the other one because I had the help of the market growing as well in between. So there's kind of two phases.
You just say you're brilliant. That's all you need to say,
No.
The market was there as a bonus, but really, I knew it was all going to happen.
Far from it. far
but
from
that's
it. I would
good.
have liked to have said that. Yeah.
That's a good outcome in any case.
Thank you.
And the final one, which is not your final project, but it's this one that is the most recent purchase.
Correct. So this one was a bit of an interesting one where we purchased this house here, beautiful looking house in a suburb in one of Mayfield's inner city suburbs, I guess you could say. Not Mayfield, Newcastle's inner city suburbs, which is Mayfield East. It's quite close to the city. It's quite underrated suburb, but we bought that for, I don't know, quite a cheap price. I can't remember now, $380,000 or something like that, a number of years ago. And we bought that purely to do a renovation and an extension. That was the plan at that stage. You can see we've done that. This is the one here. We've extended it and renovated it. This is what it looks like at the moment. So it's gone from this picture up here, this up here to this down here. So we've done that renovation and we've extended it, concrete driveway and just tidied up the garage and all the fence and everything out the front and made it a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom place. But while we were living there, I kind of come up with the idea. I wonder if my neighbour here would be interested in selling it to me, selling their block of land to me, just because with the two combined, there's potential to do some developments. So I spoke to my town planner that I'd worked with a couple of times and my architect, and they told me, look, if you do somehow manage to buy that house next door, you could probably put 2 standalone townhouses in the backyard, as you can see on this plan here. So this is the house that we bought first, and this is the sketch 2-story townhouses in this case. So I approached the neighbour and talked to them about it, and just so happened that they were looking to move in the next year or so, but they were happy to sell to me prior to then because I was interested in buying it. They went and got a price from some real estate agent, I'm not sure, that they trusted, which was good, and they brought it back to me and said, this is the price you need to pay if you want to buy it. And I looked at it and put that into my spreadsheet and basically just said, yeah, that's great, thank you, I'll purchase it from you at that price. And I was just very, very lucky. I guess it was one of those things. I was procrastinating again for quite a while, thinking, oh, will I ask? I'll sound like an idiot if I go and ask them if they want to sell their house to me. Like, how silly is that? No, it won't happen. Surely that's too good to be true. And then I just did it and it happened. Like, it's just a lot of these things you just got to do, and whether it works or it doesn't work, you don't know unless you ask about it. So that's kind of the approach I take with things now.
So what did you end up buying that property for? Because you mentioned you purchased yours for about 300 plus.
380. Yeah,
So
I bought this one for 380.
Since that time.
Yeah, it has gone up a lot. So I bought this for 380, and then it was about 4.5 years later when I bought the house next door. It was a mirror image of the house that we bought when we bought it. So we'd already renovated ours, but it looked like what ours was when we bought it. Instead of paying $380, we paid $640 for it. About 4 years later. So we were like,
Wow.
it was hard. It was hard to pay that much money. That's how much the market had already moved in that area. Yeah, almost not quite, but almost doubled. Like a lot of growth there. So we paid $640 for it. Pardon me. Yeah, and then at the time of that purchase, we got our house revalued there, and the two prices together, so it was $640, and then our house got valued at about $800,000 at that point in time. So we'd done quite a good renovation and got some growth out of that as well. So that's why here I've got the purchase price of 1.4, because that was the time when we decided to make it a development project. So yeah, two almost 600 square meter blocks. So we've got almost 1,200 square meters combined. The development costs here on this one is about 26,000. It's a lot cheaper than the previous ones because I have the team. I know what I've got to do, and I'm just not going to waste any time doing any wrong planning. Hopefully, we've already got the development approval now, and that's what it ended up being. So that's good. The construction costs on this are a little bit outdated now, to be honest. 740,000. I've got to go through and probably update that. It's fairly straightforward, being it's just a concrete driveway down the middle, then with the two standalone townhouses. But there is definitely some that's got to lift a little bit. The renovation costs, that's including.
I noticed, sorry, Jarrad, that's cheaper than the duplexes that you built.
That's correct. Yeah, the duplexes that we built, they were more expensive because I know they're attached, but they're actually a larger style. They're a larger size. I mean, so these townhouses here are about 200 square meters each for the size of the house, and these other ones are about 160 square meters each. So if we take that into account, there's about 40 or 80 square meters in total, less of construction
difference.
So prior to COVID, it was reasonable. Construction prices have actually gone up since COVID due to material shortages, which is a recent thing. So we're yet to quite put our finger on the pulse for the exact construction prices it's going to be.
Construction.
Obviously, and we haven't got the construction certificate yet, so we can't get build prices on that either. The other thing with this, it's quite a long driveway, and we had to build a concrete detention tank for this project here. You can see it here, this large concrete detention tank, which cost about 20 grand. That was because to help with the stormwater drainage for the block, because another learning, this block was actually in flood prone land. So I did recognise that prior to buying it, and something that I paid for at council was called a flood certificate, and they tell you that the level that you need to build your new development, like the floor level you need to build your new development at, to get it out of the flood prone waters for the 1 in 100
so you can
year
see
storm or
it's
whatever it is.
fairly thick sort of concrete there.
Yeah, so that's why we've had, this is the garage, so that doesn't actually have to be up out of the flood prone area, but then the living areas have all lifted up higher. So that's why you can see. So that's something worth paying for. If you're in any flood affected area, you go and pay the council, and you should be able to, depending on what council it is, but they'll give you a flood certificate to tell you what level you have to build your development to get it out of any flood issues that they perceive.
So
anyway,
you've got to step up to the ground floor.
Yeah, so this is the garage. Yeah, that's the garage. That's the entryway, and there's 4 or 5 steps up to the ground floor, and then there's actually now a second story on top of that.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of investigations and stormwater work that went into that to increase the construction costs. But these construction costs definitely need to be looked at. I'll be upfront there. That's a bit out of date. That was prior to COVID hitting, and the construction costs have probably gone up 15 or 20% since then. So moving through this one again, it's going to take 4 years. It just takes time. It continues to take time. Partly, mostly in my from my perspective, it's because of my financial capacity to get the projects done. I can't really do one project until the other one's finished, especially because I'm, trying to increase the size of the project as we go along. So yeah, I need to wait for one project to finish before then I can start the construction of the other project. So that's kind of why it's dragging on. And there's some pretty crazy sale prices there. They haven't obviously been tested. They're just estimated from a real estate agent in that area. But that's just based on the recent sales in the area. So all they do is look at things that have sold in the area and give you comparable sales to figure out what yours might sell for.
Yeah. Which will end up looking like a pretty healthy profit.
Yeah. I mean, this is what the numbers are coming out like, and if it happens to be like that, it's absolutely unbelievable. But we'll just see when it happens, hey?
Fantastic. I mean, the thing is that you've got a little bit of a buffer there. If obviously construction prices are going to go up, the construction is probably going to take a little bit longer as well. But you've got a fair bit of profit to work with as well. And considering as well, I mean, you've got from now till 2023, maybe a bit more movement in the price.
Potentially as well. Yeah, that's something you always should do, is when you're putting your sale prices in, put it in at today's dollars, even if you think the market might go up, because you can't tell if it's going to go up or not. It might even go backwards a little bit. So yeah, put it in at today's dollars and be conservative, a little bit conservative where you can. It's better than I guess putting them in too high and falling a bit short.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for going through that and in such detail, sharing all the numbers. What is it that you're doing now? Tell us a little bit about Seneca Property, and I know those are your projects, but you're helping other people secure development projects as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, thanks for asking. So I've over the last year, I've started my own company called Seneca Property, as you've mentioned, and there's pretty much three main reasons as to why I've started that company. The first one is because it took me a long time, as you can tell, to get to where I am today, and I had a lot of lessons along the way. It took me a lot of mistakes that I've learned and grown from, and I want to help other people get to that position, like have that mentor that they can talk to, and help other people get to that position quicker and more effectively, rather than having to wait as long as I did for every single project. So that's kind of the main one. Two is I've made, especially once this last project's done, if it comes out like it's saying, then I've made more money from my side gig as a developer than I have from my full-time job working 35 hours, 40 hours a week over the last 12 years. So I want other people to be able to do that too and realize that it's possible. And then the third one, obviously, is that I enjoy doing it. That's my main passion, is developing property. So if I get to do that for a living while I'm helping other people, then that's the key benefit. So I've decided to start a business where I essentially can source properties that can be developed, particularly in the Newcastle market where I've done all mine. So the first step I had to do was go out and get my real estate agent license. So I'm a licensed real estate agent. So now I can act as a buyer's agent for people. And what I do is I can source properties with this kind of development potential. Maybe not quite the last. It's hard to find ones that stack up as good as that last one, but certainly somewhere in the middle is what I find for other people, for other clients, and then negotiate and buy it for the best possible price and terms for them, basically. As part of that, I put together a feasibility like what you've seen, based on my experiences and what's happening in the market for construction costs, and then also what the likely sales are of the project, to show the client before they're going to go ahead and purchase the property. And then once we've gone ahead and purchased that property for them, they can see that the potential profit and we're happy with it. Then I go and use the team that I've worked hard for over the last 10 years to develop, and I now have quite a trusted team that I work with. I use that team to go and develop the property for them. So do all the development documentation, get it through ready to build, manage all that. And the best part about it, and kind of ties back in with the main reason why I do it, is I don't just go and do that all in the background and then say, look, it's ready to build now. I walk you through the process as well, and teach you about what's coming up, what's next, and talk to you about the key decisions, let you have obviously input into it as well, so you're learning along the way. And once we're ready to build, then same thing, we'll go out and get a couple of tenders to get the project built from a few different builders in the area. Having that experience in the area and knowing what's going on, it's good to know. I know which builders that are quite good to work with and which ones to kind of, maybe think twice about working with, because there's obviously different builders approach things different ways and you can have different relationships with people. So I'll manage the build from start to finish as well once you're happy with the builder. So it's basically, I call it like an armchair guide to, not a guide, sorry, stealing a reference then, an armchair property development process for people. So everything from buying it through to completion of the build, and then helping them, giving them assistance and whether they're going to sell it or lease it as well from that point. And yeah, have I got you there?
Fantastic. Awesome. Jarrad, I think that is a huge amount of value. Thank you so much for sharing. And again, some people, yes, I'm still here. I think my reception's sort of dropping off, but I wanted to say again, thank you so much for sharing. And
It's
everyone
okay.
for contributing, asking your questions. If you've got more questions for Jarrad, please feel free to pop them in the comments or reach out to him on Facebook Messenger as well, or email. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yep.
I'll just keep going. Oh, there we are. We're back. Love your work, Seneca Properties. We've got some questions. Do you charge buyers agents fees? Is it a percentage project management fee? Also, can I be involved in the learning through the project? I believe that's sort of what you did mention, but best to have that conversation with Jarrad because it may be different in different projects and situations as well. What's the best email to get you at?
It just came up on the screen there. Yep, Jarrad, Jarrad @senecaproperty.com.au. Also,
Okay.
you can just reach out on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, any of those social medias. And there's my website there as well, senecaproperty.com.au. There is a senecaproperty.com, which I kind of realised a bit too late. That's a company in the UK, so don't go there. Senecaproperty.com.au.
Yeah, they've got Newcastle in the UK as well, if I'm not wrong. So you might be buying in the wrong spot.
Yeah. No, hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Well, thank you again so much and everyone for joining us. Jarrad, all the best and we'll see you around. Feel free to pop into the community the results of the sale and how you're progressing as well. We'd love to see that. For everyone else, thank you for joining us this week on the Business of Property. Make sure you visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Cheryl Leong and you'll find all our past Business of Property videos there. And if you found value in this show, I appreciate if you could subscribe to our channel. So until next week, take care, keep safe, goodbye, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.